Um, Just want to welcome you all here. This is the second of our 6-part speaker series. My name is Daisha Rubel, and I'm on the steering committee of the Hamilton-Wenham League of Women Voters. I wanted to just start with giving you a little bit of an introduction about what the League is. This is our mission statement. Established in 1959, our local league has been a positive force in our 2 towns. A nonpartisan political organization encouraging informed and active participation of local citizens in their government. We work to increase understanding of major public policy issues and influence public policy through voter education and advocacy. So these are some of the things we've been involved with. You'll recognize a number of them. We have a monthly newsletter. We post a lot of stuff on Facebook relevant to elections and information for voters. We also have our Civics Bee, which is a very popular event in the spring. And we had a volunteer fair last year, which we hope to repeat in the fall of 2024. We've got a lot of materials that we publish that help people to run for office or understand other aspects of voter service, votings at elections. And we also host the ever-popular Candidates Night every spring. Those are just some of the things that we do. And if you'd like to learn more, please visit our table in the back and think about maybe joining our organization. We're a very active group, and we have a lot of great people involved and a lot of great room for new ideas and new energy. So please consider that. And now I will hand the mic over. Oh, wait a minute. I wanted to tell us about the speaker series. So this is the second, local print journalism. We've got sustainability, affordable housing, media literacy, and water resources and conservation. So keep an eye out for all of these interesting events. If you can't come to these events, we're going to have them available on our YouTube channel and also through HWCam. So everything is being filmed and that will be available to you. And if you missed Civics 101, you should definitely check it out. It's a really great presentation and was a really interesting event. And now I'm going to hand it over to my part of my dream team, Lindsay Whitman, who's also a League member, and she's going to introduce our panel tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Daisha. So as Daisha and Bethany Swanson and I were working to organize this event and trying to pull speakers together, I was really struck by the wealth and depth of knowledge and talent that we had in our small community on this topic. So I'm going to introduce the panelists, and I'm sure you will agree that they're an impressive group. So first we have Paul Mihalidis. Paul's going to be our moderator tonight, and he's a professor of civic media and journalism and a special advisor to the provost at Emerson College. It's there he runs the master's program in media and design. Paul's research and practice explores how communities use media and news to advocate for positive social change. He's published numerous books and articles and traveled around the world working to assist communities in local news and media initiatives focused on more inclusive and connected communities. Next to Paul, we have John Muldoon. John is the co-founder and publisher of the nonprofit Ipswich Local News. With a professional career spanning journalism and IT, he launched the Ipswich Local News website in 2015. The paper then evolved into a print edition in he launched it in 2015, and then it evolved into an online edition in 2019, and is now mailed to 9,300 addresses in Ipswich and Rowley every week. Next to John is Jack Lawrence. Jack is a longtime Hamilton resident and retired businessman who helped John build the Ipswich Local News by providing seed capital and selling advertising. Seeing the need for a vehicle to marshal the collective participation of our citizens here in Hamilton-Wenham, Jack has been working with a group of other residents to build funding and support for bringing a paper back to Hamilton-Wenham. And then last on the end, we have Ella Tran, who is a senior at Hamilton-Wenham High School and the student editor for the General Consensus, which is the high school newspaper. In addition to her work on the paper, she is also the captain of the high school swim team and on the leadership team for DECA, where she runs the school's speaker series. She plans to pursue a degree in economics in college with a possible major or double minor in English. So thank you very much to our speakers, and Paul, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Ella, I didn't know, I had 2 degrees as an undergrad in economics and English. And look where I am today. So this is like the path is perfect. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's wonderful to see such a full room for this event. And I first want to thank the League of Women Voters of Hamilton-Wenham. I think we're all here tonight because we care passionately about our community, and we care passionately about the institutions that serve our community. And the League of Women Voters, since I have been a resident in Wenham for, I think, 11 years now, has been very actively engaged in prioritizing community engagement, civic engagement through education and outreach. So I'd love us all to thank the organizers tonight, Daisha and Lindsay and their friends, for putting out a wonderful event. So we've got a pretty light topic tonight, local print journalism and the future of democracy. There's nothing too complicated there. I'm really excited to be with this group today. I think the idea here is that we're going to have a conversation and a discussion around what local news is like today, what challenges there are, what opportunities there are, and then to seed and share the idea that some folks have been working on here to bring back local news infrastructure for the towns of Hamilton and Wenham in particular. What we're going to kind of talk through is a little bit of the challenges and the problems. We're going to talk a little bit about some responses that have been happening, and then focus in on our important project in this town. We do have John, who's actively involved in running a current local initiative, and Jack, who's leading this charge in town, and importantly, Ella, who, what I don't want this panel to be, as I was telling the panelists here, is some hearkening back to a glory day of wonderful news, and now we're going to lament all the loss. And I really think it's important to understand where we are, the realities of what our new media and technologies provide for us, and how news impacts all different generations and residents in the community. So we will start with a few questions, and then we'll kind of head into some discussion. First thing I'd like to do is ask the audience a few questions. So how many people here have heard of the term news desert before? Okay, so most of us have. We have some heads that we're not sure what that means. How many people think Hamilton-Wenham is a news desert? Okay, great. We're getting some clarity. I like that. I'm not going to define. I'm going to let the experts define that. It's not for me. How many people find it challenging to access local news about Hamilton-Wenham on a regular basis? Okay. How many people? This is great. I'm just going to keep going. If that's okay. Make this up as we go. How many people have to rely on social networks or technologies to find relevant information about local news and information? Okay, wonderful. How many people find it challenging when they enter into those technology spaces to find credible and valuable information? Okay. How many people in the room, this is my last question for now, for you all, we'll come back. How many people in the room feel connected to the local institutions and knowledgeable about the work they do for you? Okay. These aren't easy questions. If you were a class at Emerson, it'd be a C- right now. It's kind of big. They're big, heavy questions. It is a really, the relationship between our local news media and our institutions is vital. We're all here because we care about community, and we're all here, I think, at the panel today because we're concerned about the validity and the credibility of the information environments that support our local institutions. The relationship between local media environments and our civic health is paramount, and it's very connected. We'll learn soon a number of research studies and other things that show that more healthy local news and media environments equate with more inclusive and strong and robust communities that function stronger and have overall positive traits for civic health. We're at a time now, not just nationally, but in our technological environment where we have lowest levels of trust in our public institutions since they've been measuring them. And of the public institutions, so local governments, national governments, all types of local community organizations and outreach groups, media institutions often are at the lowest end of that trust. We have lack of transparency in our media institutions. They're in platforms that have kind of inserted distance between us and the institutions that serve us, right? So we kind of start to see and feel the implications of communities that aren't exactly sure about the information they can trust and don't have a cohesive space for that information to exist. When we are reliant on social and technological platforms alone that don't have connection to our local information environments, we adopt the values of those platforms. So they prioritize quick, short, and sensational information to keep us engaged continuously. They rely on user comments, and they prioritize user comments that are normally the most sensational to rise to the top. Some of these trends that I'm just sharing to preface this conversation allow us to consider what the implications of for relying on non-local sources for information about the way our community runs. We've seen this play out in various ways. And I think today we're here to kind of unpack that problem a little bit with our panelists and you all today, and then talk about some of the innovations that are happening that we see responding right now. One of the biggest implications of distance between us and the local institutions that serve us is that we start to break down in terms of wanting to support them, understanding the connection they have to the health of our communities, from our neighborhoods to the way that our public offices run. And local news is at the core of rebuilding that. And so we're really excited here today with John and Jack and Ella and everybody here to kind of dive into this conversation. So I will open it up now to the panel. And then also at each section, turn outward to hear your ideas on some of this, and we'll have time for questions and answers and discussions at the end. So I'm going to start. With John right next to me, and John can obviously introduce, but if you want to, head editor and founder of the Ipswich Weekly with a long background in this field. I'm curious to get your take on what you think the implications of information deserts are in your experience as a journalist when you've seen kind of a breakdown in local news.
Boy. The implications. A number of studies have been done. So there's a correlation between civic engagement and the lack of local news. There's another correlation between the lack of local news and overspending at the local level, either wasteful or corrupt. And then more generally, there's this kind of feeling of community. We say in Ipswich that everybody is literally on the same page. We mail the paper out to every house in the town. They all see the same news. They all see the same stories. So there's some definable, and then there's the intangibles.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks, John. And Jack, your take in town here as being a longtime resident and supporter of this initiative, we used to have a local paper. We used to have a local cohesive media environment. I think that went, I don't know if anyone knows when that actually officially went away. It was here when I moved here.
John's co-founder of the Ipswich Local News, of course, was Bill Wasserman, who I believe owned the Hamilton Wenham Chronicle as well as all the other chronicles around here. So he was a fellow with ink in his blood, and they built the foundation, so they had the momentum going.
And so what do you see as, in our town? I mean, as you noticed from seeing that go away, have you seen changes in the town or in the way that people are engaged in their local information and institutions?
Sadly, I'd have to say I have, certainly have. And I actually went and looked up news desert just to see what the official definition was. And the best that the internet could produce was that a news desert is a community with limited access to the sort of credible, comprehensive news and information that feeds democracy at the grassroots level. And I think that's just so critical. I just have a real feeling that we have lost that in Hamilton, the sense of community. We don't get a lot of people coming to different committees in town to see what's going on. I'm a member now of the Master Plan Committee. I think we've had maybe 2 people come and visit us to see what we're up to, what sort of chicanery. And I was on the Town Hall Restoration Rebuilding Committee, and of course that turned into something of a fiasco. So that was my impetus for having a look at it, and I just found it's so important. In small communities like ourselves, local government is us. We don't elect a mayor. The Board of Selectmen, the Select Board is not a collective mayor. We, the citizens, actually are responsible for going to town meeting and setting out the principles under which the Select Board is to operate. And so we are the citizens who actually come to town meeting are the governors of the town. And I've long thought that the best thing we could do would be to reduce the quorum to have a town meeting to 0. And then if 2 people showed up, 2 people would run the town. And that wouldn't last very long, I don't think. So it'd be pretty good incentive. So based on that premise that we are the citizens, we need to be very well-informed voters. We need to have a very good feel for how our town is operating. And towns are very complicated things, actually. I've been a selectman, I've been on the FinCom, and I know that Ella will tell you about the papers that she runs in the schools, and the schools provide a vital function. But there's all kinds of other functions that go on in this place, too. We have police and fire protection. We have water supply issues. As you know, we have limits every summer on our water supply, and there's actually a lot of things going on right now to correct that. We have roads and bridges that are crumbling in many cases. We have recreation issues. We've built some stuff. We've got other things that probably people would like. The library, we have a lovely library. This was the fruits of a lot of labor. And of course, we have a government administration, which has a whole series of committees and things of that nature. So there's just a lot of things going on in this town that are critical. And those are the things that the Ipswich Local News has worked out how to cover. And here in Hamilton, Wenham, we will have our own reporters, dedicated, and people will know who they are in the audience, as it were, and can come up to them with, discuss their issues and so forth, and we'll provide a place where people can write in and say what they're concerned with and look for answers. And that will guide us in things that we will go out and investigate and get the pros and cons to the best possible way that we're able to do that. I told Paul I was going to, once I get going, it's going to be an hour, so I better stop right there and see what happens.
You've got 56 minutes left if
56.
you want to continue. Thanks, and we're going to hear a lot more about that initiative and what the Ipswich Local News does. I want to just quickly bring Ella into this conversation. Current high school student now. I'm wondering how, what your experience of the discussions that you're having around the kind of role of journalism. So in how you all approach it in informing your school, how you all see the role of journalism at your level.
Yeah, I think that our school emphasizes our writing program, and so we have journalism built into our curriculum as an elective. And then the general consensus is also a club for the students who are more passionate, want to pursue it outside of that. I think our goal with the newspaper right now is really trying to inform the students and the people within the school, simply because there wasn't really an audience outside of the school who was looking for that information, or we didn't know that there was that audience. So I think that what Jack was talking about with a bigger like newspaper that focuses on more aspects, or just expanding, obviously that's a great initiative, but also I feel like in the school we could be expanding more to a broader audience.
Yeah, and yes, I agree. We'll talk about that. One other question. I can just follow up with that. I'm curious, before we start thinking about initiatives and asking folks here what they've seen. Growing up in like an age of pretty abundant technology, and I'll ask this to all three of you just to kind of understand. What do you think the biggest implication of mobile phones, social networks have been on news?
Definitely taking things at face value. I think people use their phones and technology for what's the most convenient, and a lot of times that's through social media, which, like you were saying earlier, is about sensationalism. That's not always the most accurate, and you don't get a full picture of what's going on within a single subject or a single story, and your algorithms and stuff are based on what you are interested in, what you are following, meaning that if you have one specific opinion and you like that one post, you're going to keep seeing more posts similar to that. You're not going to see the other point of view. And I think that's a really big implication of focusing on news through technology and social media alone.
John, do you want to give that one a go?
Sure. I'd be a producer and a consumer of news online. So by and large, I'm happy with the internet. I mean, life's a lot different than when I was Ella's age. Things, if you're relying on things like Facebook or Twitter to kind of get your headlines, if that's your starting point, I think you're in the wrong place. People need to be more discerning, but on the whole, I think it's a good thing.
Okay. Do you want to add in any thoughts on that?
I have a friend who went to AI to see what kind of a master plan they would turn out. It took them about 3 seconds, I think. And, it was pretty good, maybe better than what we're going to produce. So.
Well, there are affordances. There are many affordances of our current technological and digital spaces, and local news. Well, so I would almost offer that that the platforms themselves have best intentions, right? And they offer access for a lot of things. They connect people with various needs. But the values of the platforms that we rely on don't align with the values of news and public life. And I think that's one of the challenges. Digital is, I even think the title of today with local print, it's a little bit misleading because I don't think there's going to be a return to some 7-day-a-week paper on the front door. There'll still be a very heavy digital preference. But I do still think it is the way our technological lives exist is it's very hard to circumvent these platforms. They're at the center of everything we do. So, we in town, and I want to open up to the community a little bit to think about when you have to rely on these platforms, not only because there's no news source covering, so then we go to these centralized platforms. We do have some regional sources that will cover our town here and there, right? They'll come in and cover some things that happen. But when we rely on these mediated platforms for local news about our schools, about our government, I'd love to hear experiences that you've had when that's been your source of news to learn about town-wise events. I don't know if anyone wants to share experiences they have with relying on social platforms and networks in town for news.
I might just comment that the Salem News, I guess, is probably as close as we get to a local rag that tries to provide us with some information at the moment. And I think I see something relevant to Hamilton maybe once a month, twice a month, something along that line. The articles are well done when they're done, but there's really nothing there. And the successor, I guess it was, to the Hamilton Wenham Chronicle, which was the local name, it took all the towns around us, and I think we got one paragraph, maybe a month, something along that line. It was so totally inadequate. As I say, there are so many complicated issues going on in Hamilton just right now that are so important right here. And it's not, that kind of tokenism isn't going to do it. I see our mission will be to really cover Hamilton and Wenham and all of the issues here in Hamilton and Wenham from both sides. Try to get the pros and the cons, assemble all the facts, keep out the emotion, and pitch a straight story out of the whole thing.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd just like to say, I think the loss of the Chronicle was extremely impactful in terms of getting voters information that they could read you get it, you come out once a week, right, the Chronicle? So you have it, they would do interviews of all the candidates, you would know what positions needed to be filled, what the timelines were. It brought a sense of community with school coverage, school issues, sports, academic, it was a whole community newspaper. It was where you could, and a lot of people complained it wasn't always accurate, but it provided the community with information that was much more specific to our two towns than anywhere else you're going to get. And I think it's a real loss, especially in the civics area, because as someone mentioned, the open positions on the various boards, just involvement, people attending town meetings, all of that is impacted, I think. It has a trickle-down effect.
Right. And most others have a similar experience with that, is that you can see or feel that. What replaced that?
Nothing has replaced it.
Nothing? Yeah.
I'll come up to the mic.
Oh, there is a microphone here. I'm sorry.
Behavior.
I didn't even know that. That's on me.
All I was going to say is that there are some various town Facebook pages. And I don't comment a lot of those things, but I look at them on occasion. And it's really terrible when there's a controversial issue, because you just hear the squeakiest wheel, and then people pile on, and then they can also be very, it's mean to other people, and they're not gracious, they're not polite. The discourse can unravel. I have a friend who was an administrator of one of those sites, had to leave. I mean, it can really kind of just become something very not useful.
Right.
So,
Right. Thank you for sharing.
In that vein, I do administrate the Ipswich Local News group on Facebook, and it's the same thing. People just go straight at it. When they resort to name calling, I delete comments, but there's still an underlying tone a lot of the time. And then we had an issue during the week where guy at the farm stand put out a sign that initially said, "We stand with Israel," and the employee got abused in the store, and then when I put that on Facebook, I just turned the comments off straight away. But you know, it's a different scene out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, what I see, and I try really hard to stay on social media, we lose nuance. Nobody has time to read long-form journalism, and a lot of people step in to fill that void. And here's the TLDR, right? Here's the headline that you need to take away. We lose nuance, we lose objectivity, and our tendency in most arenas of American life has been to turn everything into a horse race. It's binary. It's you're either for it or you're against it. And to Dacia's point, when people care enough about their side of something to speak up, it winds up, I think, sometimes inadvertently being divisive, because it's not a place for nuance.
Right.
And then the ad hominem stuff happens, the personal attacks. And you could have an individual in town who has a perfectly reasonable point of view, but because they were on the wrong side of another issue, they are immediately dismissed and pounced upon. And it's just, it's not productive at all. That sort of objectivity that journalism brings to the table doesn't exist online, certainly not on social media or user-based social media.
Right.
I think the key word there, if I might, Paul, just is nuance. Nuance is what we've lost almost in our civilization at this point, in our culture. And that is such a critical thing. I mean, some things are black and white. Terrorism is terrible. Slaughter is terrible. Massacres are terrible. But after that, it's all nuance. And it's so important to get those nuances into something. And that's the critical mission that we're hopefully going to be able to enter into.
Thank you for sharing. We've often, in some recent work, we make the comparison of, so I think platform, you know, it is interesting. Like, I think nuance is right, but I also, going back to that idea of relation. So I think what has been normalized in these social networks, we compare them to driving in a car alone. That if you're driving alone, you have metal and glass around you, and you're navigating a lot of information in real time. And if someone accidentally cuts you off, what's the first thing that you think? I hate you, you're an idiot, you're a blank, blank, bleep, bleep, bleep. You realize, like, the thing that social media often does, and it's designed this way. It's not like we opt into it. Again, it's not about possible, but it's designed to reduce things to you having to navigate real information in quick time and make snap judgments. So it is that same, and the mobile phone is the metal and glass within which you enter into that space. And you're often not forced to engage in the type of care. We wouldn't have these conversations most of the time in public, or we could feel each other a little bit. You have that human connection around local information that unites you, that you might be able to smile or laugh or talk around something. And the idea is, like, no one always thinks news is objective or straight. That's not the point, because we interpret it with our own biases. But when we don't even have the grounds with which we engage, you end up kind of start to fracture that civic cohesion that is needed to have things function. Ella, in your situation, do you, for local news, do you go, I mean, what's your approach to local news here?
As a student, we don't really get onto those Facebook pages or any social media for like local news. I think a lot of our local news comes from other students who heard things from their parents, or they heard other things from other people, and it's mostly rumors. We don't really have that, like, we don't have a source of information for local news. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
You will.
I know about those rumors. I have an 8th grader in the house, and I hear something new every day happening in the school. Let's pivot here for a second to talk about successful emerging models of local journalism. And I want us to kind of focus. I think the problems to us are quite evident. And I think, for a lot of us in town, when we saw school committee elections, when we see a lack of the ability, I'm not one who believes that. I think when towns run very well and they have strong local infrastructures, most of the people should feel comfortable if they don't have to attend everything. It's unrealistic to think that young families with young children that are having dual incomes today are going to carve out all the time to go to all the things. I do want to I don't think it's a binary, but with towns that have strong local infrastructures, they can feel knowledgeable enough to know when they have to make the decisions. I think we've seen the last 5 to 7 years in this town what happens when you're relying on other types of information. So we have seen this with school committee elections, with other local town elections, and not really being able to, I've talked to folks in my community about, like, all right, where to go to find these 2 candidates. There's a special runoff. And you can go to their sites, but their sites are simply advocating for things that they say. It's really hard to understand a more, I think, distanced approach to this. So, but I think that the problem is, I think, fairly well defined at this point. And so is the need to restore local media environments. I think we've seen this now, and I know I was talking to Jack and John in particular, who were at an event in Cambridge yesterday around independent news organizations, that in Massachusetts and in towns right around us, we actually have one of the most vibrant emerging local news ecosystems. And I think what we're doing is just hopefully the next step in that. So I wanted to, and I think, good part of this and why we have Ella with us as well is because these local news systems are not simply, they're not simply about people reporting on people, but they are about communities engaging with the community through a lot of different modes of reporting and story. And you need the things around hard news, but you need folks to be covering our schools, art, culture, sports, things that make us love being part of this town. It's not simply holding accountable our local officers. It's about bringing joy and insight and value back into town.
And the police blotter.
And the police plotter. I mean, that was going to be the grand finale of this whole thing. We need someone to get to that courthouse every day and tell us what's happening and who's been. But it is good. So I did want to start by giving John a little bit of maybe to talk a little bit about your experiences starting your local initiative and how that came to be and where you found the value there.
Sure. So the short version is I started a website in 2015. I found out pretty quickly that there was a strong appetite for local news in the town. What I did was I went to town hall and sat in front of the select board and the planning board and the school committee, took notes, wrote stories, and then I branched out, started doing features, as my background is journalism in IT, so I was able to do the website myself and put everything together. So then the police, I started following the police. I went to court every week, looked at the dispositions, got myself a scanner whenever there was a crash. I was in the car and chasing ambulances. And over those 4 years, I found that the most viewed, in the internet, of course, you get metrics. So the most viewed were police and fire, in this order: police and fire, obituaries, and businesses coming and going. After that, it was town hall. Somewhere after that, it was town hall and the school committee. So all your tax money, there wasn't that same interest in it, but I think those stories were more evergreen because you followed a project or a process and you linked back and in 2019, I hooked up with Bill Wasserman, who used to publish the Chronicle in Ipswich and the Chronicle in Hamilton and Wenham, along with a dozen, 10 other titles around the North Shore. He retired in 1986, if you can believe it. And then in the intervening years, watched as a succession of owners kind of ran the operations into the ground. And finally, I forget the exact year, maybe it was 2019-20, they did this horrible amalgamation. So you had a paper that covered everywhere from Middleton down to Wenham. And then it folded. So Bill and myself, I'd experimented with print editions over the years just to get a feel for the work, how to put a newspaper together, where to find a printer, all that stuff. Bill put some seed money into it. 2019, we launched. He was 92 at the time. He had a
Walking door to
cane,
door,
a
collecting
walking
ads.
cane, and Bill went out selling ads. And although we set up as a non-profit, what he did was he had us emphasize the commercial aspect of the operation. So we rely heavily on advertising. That pays very many of the bills. And then we top that up with donations. And we get a few grants, but grants haven't been very good, but we get a few. So it's essentially advertising and donations. So that's support from the community, either the business community or the residential community. And we view it as a community newspaper. It's got school sports in there, features, town government, everything you would expect. This week is only 24 pages, but we like to be 24, 32 pages in size. So, and I think people feel a great sense of ownership to it. We got over 1,000 letters to the editor last year. The vast, overwhelming majority of which were sane. So, you know, it's not a platform for the crazies by any means. So,
And just to clarify, so it's a weekly, it's a weekly paper that's distributed for free.
yeah.
And then, but the news still daily comes from, you're publishing daily online.
We publish daily online. We're pretty strict about what gets into the print edition in terms of our coverage area. So I imagine, you know, when Jack starts here, it'll be a Hamilton Wenham paper, as ours is Ipswich Rowley. But on the website, you know, we give ourselves permission to go further afield. So we'll review a play at the Gloucester Stage Company, for example. Or if there's a big enough Fire Newbury report, we'll have something on that, you know. So you've got more room for maneuver on the web, but
Right.
the print edition we feel has to be more focused.
Right. And a couple more questions before I open it up, because I actually think this is important for us to know the bones of how this works so we can understand what would make something like this exist. So in terms of the model, so you said it's a nonprofit, but it's a mix of advertisers and then donations from the town. Is that, can you talk a little bit about how that model works?
Sure. So I have some percentages here in front of me, but so when myself and Bill sat down to discuss how this would be put together, we wanted a non-profit to protect it, to future-proof it. We didn't want a new Gannett coming in and, you know, doing to this what they had done to the rest of local media. We sat down in this place, Gather on Market Street in Ipswich, and it's got big windows, and we looked out and we saw Brookline Bank and the Dollar Store and TD Bank, and we said, they're never going to advertise with us. The business has changed too much since Bill was around in the 80s. So we felt for those two important reasons we had to go non-profit, that the advertising base wouldn't support us 100% and the structure would protect it. And then, yeah, we went into this not knowing what to expect. Bill knew he could sell a certain amount of ads, but we didn't know how the public would react. And we knew what our expenses were going to be. So we were very pleasantly surprised with the public response to the paper, right off the bat. And it's only improved since.
And then my last question about this particular case before we head on to some others is, tell me a little bit about how the journalism works. Who writes, who contributes, how the coverage model works with this.
Sure. So we set a premium on fairness and accuracy, and a cynic will tell me, well, you're not any of that. But we do try to get it right. We're embarrassed when we get it wrong, and we correct it and apologize. We try to be comprehensive in terms of our coverage of town government. So we, if there's a lot of issues around a topic or, a lot of nuance, we feel we have to go into that and do something of a deep dive. So online you'll easily get 1,200 word articles. Just for reference, with ads on a page, an article here is about 700 words. So that'll fill up one of our little pages here. So, so the accuracy is key. And then, comprehensive. We like to do features. We like to get out. We like to meet people. We like to celebrate successes if there are successes in the community. We have a senior in the high school who's our intern and has been since she was a freshman in the high school. Unfortunately, she's graduating this year. So if you know any rising middle schoolers in Ipswich, please send them my way.
Not to write for Ipswich, incidentally. It'll be for Hamilton. So.
Yes, yeah. So I don't know if that answered the question.
No, that's a good answer. Now convince us why Ipswich is so much better than Hamilton Wenham.
It isn't.
I'm just kidding.
No, I don't.
But as a businessman, my whole career, we're very good at being parasites, as you can imagine. And we are going to be grafting ourselves onto the experience of what has been built up in Ipswich. And they've done all the hard work. We want to take advantage of that hard work. We think there are economies of scale to be gained by working together on this thing. We will follow the exact same model. We'll use the same printers, but we will have, as I say, dedicated reporters for here, freelance, student, and regulars that will attend all of our meetings and will be dedicated to the Hamilton Wenham scene. And it will be the same model. It'll be a nonprofit model dependent on donations. We're going to lock the doors here in a minute. I hope you all brought your checkbooks. Nobody gets out of here without, no, I'm kidding. But we're in the process now of getting our 501c3 aspect locked down so that those who do donate, we can give them the benefit of having that as a tax write-off. Because the mission that we are identifying with is education. I am not a journalist. My partner is a journalist. John, of course, is a journalist. But journalism is not necessarily what we're going to be all about. What we are going to be all about is education, is getting the facts out for informed citizens to function along with their town, that build community. And that's what the INN talked about, the news network, the independent news network that we went to, John and I went to a couple days ago, and they talked about the fact that you need to talk about education if you're going to get foundations to be able to donate to you. They can't donate to support journalism, they can support education. So these are the critical things that we learned the other day. And I hope you all, when we get this thing rolling and the paper starts floating into it's gonna come into your P.O. box. It'll be delivered in your mail every week. And I particularly am really enthusiastic about the paper model, because I think to have to go to a website takes a certain amount of energy. We're all very busy, but if this thing shows up as a paper in your post box, you got to make a decision as to whether you're going to read it before you use it for wrapping fish or whatever else it may be. So it's hard news. I like hard news. My medical professional is here tonight, thank God, and that's what she noticed as soon as I walked in, because I had my globe, hopelessly expensive globe, which I get every day. But it's I think it's hopefully the way to go. We're going to make this thing work one way or the other. We'll see how it goes. Now, I hope you all will feel free to support us as we go along.
Thanks, Jack.
Paul, got a hand?
Yeah, of course.
So will there won't be any online aspects to what you're planning for the Hamilton newspaper?
I think we will have an online portion. I'm not particularly enthused about it, but my partner is, and John knows how to do all that stuff, and so I think there will be that coming along, yes.
Well, I think this is also, I think it's important because general relation, we have a question there, but it is important, like, if we look at demographics of how people read, a weekly in-person is right, but there is a whole emerging population in our town that refuses paper, and even if, like, weekly is good, but I think we need to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talking more here tonight. So, John, do you think some of your success was because you had an online presence to begin with?
Yes, yeah.
You're saying like just mail it out. You're just gonna get the town, roll call and mail it to everybody, or did people opt in? How did that go? Was 9,000 people? Was that Ipswich and Raleigh?
Yes.
More people?
No, there's, you mean for the paper edition?
Yeah, I mean, did you have people opt in somehow to get it, or?
No, they moved to town. That's your opt-in. And if you want to move, if you want to opt out, you move out. Yes. It just.
Well, I mean, did everybody feel, well, you know how people are, it was okay, just,
You know,
you paid the postage, you could.
we pay the postage, we pay the
Mail
printing.
to everybody in town, and that's just how it went?
Yeah, it goes into every
Yes,
mailbox.
sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we have 3 questions. Yeah, I think, yeah.
I just want to make a point about, and you said the rising demographics. I'm 66. I'm online all the time. I love online stuff.
Yeah.
I'll read a newspaper, but the daily thing that you talked about and you were bringing in some things, that really excited me, because when I get the social media, and I'm in the current, the current group of Hamilton, I'm in the fire department,
Yeah.
get things, and I in my own brain have to piece together what's real and not to try to keep up with things, but to have one-stop shopping online. So I hope that you do focus on an online daily.
I'm hearing you, yeah. It won't be daily, though. It's going to be weekly. We're going to be a weekly.
Start weekly.
It's a
online
weekly.
presence.
I hear you, yes.
Thank you.
I think I don't have any choice anyway, so.
No, Ella, just before we get to some more questions, can you just talk to us a little bit? I mean, I think online that's largely what the general consensus does, right?
It's actually entirely online.
Entirely online. And can you talk a little bit about how you operate? I think it's what your team is like, because I know you have a class and then you have a club. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the journalism class works with Miss Burnett to publish all of their stuff fairly frequently, and they have much stricter deadlines. I'd say the general consensus club is much more for the people who want to pursue it outside of class. And those ones, they tend to be on a less strict deadline, but they oftentimes have more ability to go out for interviews and stuff because we don't have we don't have such like a specific time that you must be working on your articles. But we're entirely online. We have rolling publication, so it's updated a couple times a week with a couple new articles. We cover lots of topics. We have the shorter articles that focus on more global news. We don't really have a specifically local news section, but we do cover student life because that's our target audience right now. So that covers like our sports teams. It covers our arts throughout the school, students who are winning awards. We have a podcast. It's really anything that the students are interested in writing about and what we think that the students would be interested in reading about. Yeah.
Just say this about online, my experience online. The 4 years prior to the print edition, I felt I had hit a ceiling in terms of penetration in the town. I was seeing spikes, when there was a big crash or a big fire or something, but I wasn't seeing that. I knew already that from the trial print editions, when they were printed and distributed, that people sat up and paid attention, even though it was only an 8-page paper at the time. It's a different world, it's viewed differently. People see its importance differently than online. So that's why I think this model is still valid in this day and age.
Yeah. There's also some really interesting research we've been doing on, and this is about going back to community health, about modeling, and it's the reason why I think all of us who rely heavily on digital technologies to facilitate our daily lives, but like in the home, if you're sitting with a tablet or a phone and your children are watching you, you could talk to you blue in the face about how you're reading the news, but they simply see a device. It is interesting research about just having the presence of something that looks like news starts to cultivate civic habits in younger and younger people. It's not that they, they might even just like to look at the comics, or they like to, there's a picture, but there's a lot of research that says you just need the thing on the table. Who cares if you read it or not? They can see that, and it models these kind of civic habits. It's very interesting. Sorry, did you have a question?
A joke.
Allison? Yeah.
I was just going to ask the ratio in the Ipswich of the donors to advertisers.
No, I know you had a question.
What percentages?
What's the ratio like? Do you have more advertisers, more?
For IRS purposes,
Off the record here.
No, there's.
I feel like that's kind of important.
No, there's actual rules. For the IRS to maintain non-profit status, you have to get at least 1/3 of your income from donations. You have to be able to prove that you can maintain community support. It looks like in 2022, our advertising income was 63% of our total.
Are you happy with that as a ratio in terms of just from a journalistic that standpoint? Not running a business, not anything else, but just news and providing news. I don't know, I feel like it's better to get it from people who are paying. I don't know, that's just the traditional model, right?
Yeah. Well, if we were relying on donations, we'd have a very different paper. We employ 4.5 full-time equivalent people plus a bunch of interns and other contractors. So we have a lot of bills to pay. I'm happy with the advertising. We haven't had any controversies yet, where an advertiser says, I'm going to pull my ads if you write about this. And if they did, we'd say, yes, pull your ad. Yeah. So.
Bill Westerman is an absolute hero in North Shore. My dad, one of his early bosses, that's how old.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Wow.
So anything that's sort of seeded
question is for Ella. I mean, there are a lot of studies, not a lot, there are recent studies showing some sort of unexpected interest among people your age or in college in print publications, like Pointer Institute,
Yeah.
things like that. So how do you think, you know, a 17-year-old respond to having a town print newspaper? Do they even look at it?
I think that people read what's in front of them. And so if that means that there's a print newspaper that's right on their kitchen table every morning, I think that someone's going to sit down and read that, even within my age group, as opposed to getting on your phone and then getting on social media and then looking for the news on that. I think a print publication would be popular within the households in Hamilton, and I think that would lead to a much larger increase in the civic action and the reading of a print publication by the teenagers in our community.
What do you think teenagers would want to read about? So you don't have an iPhone and the ability to go shop whatever you want, but if somebody's planning a print newspaper, what sort of articles would engage your friends or your enemies?
I think that definitely depends on the person. Obviously, social media gives us a really good idea of what kids are looking at, and there's definitely a portion of the people I follow from my own school that are focused on very global issues or how we can change our community. I think we have a very community-centric generation. I think we're all looking for ways we can help. So I think having something that has anything that has a call to action or anything that allows us to make a difference would probably be of interest to students or the younger generation.
Just to jump in on that, when we started, we had a very great, it was during COVID as well, 2019, we started Halloween 2000, then obviously 2020 was COVID, so we had a very great paper, and people came to me and said, no one under 50 is going to read that. And so I said to our cartoonist, will you draw me a picture of a man telling a joke to his family and leave the bubble blank? So we have this dad joke that goes in every week, and we go out to the internet and we find the joke. So this is a standing, so I said, well, at least the kids will turn to that page and look at it. And then obviously there's school sports and features from the schools. So, we do try to engage the younger generation.
We'll have it.
We have a couple more questions.
I had a question about, Hamilton and Wenham has a pretty low commercial base.
Yeah.
Ipswich is a lot different. So your advertising base is much larger than what we have here. I'm just wondering how that's going to work. And in addition, I'm wondering if a small sort of nominal subscription fee would help supplement that, something not too onerous, but
That would change it certainly. I have to tell you that when I first started exploring this thing, and Bill Wasserman was still alive, and I talked to Bill, and Bill said, I don't think you've got the advertising base in Hamilton, Wenham, Jack, to get this thing off the ground. I think that COVID may have done us a big favor there. I think that a lot of people who used to be doing their businesses in Cambridge or whatever, in advertising and all kinds of, I think they're back in the trees now. I'm hoping I'm going to be pleasantly surprised on that. I think we do have some local businesses that are not on Main Street or Railroad Avenue that the composting operation, I've already got a pledge that we're going to get all their advertising, for example. Peter Britton has told me that he's going to be letting everybody know how much really good compost he's got out there for manure, whatever you want, we got plenty of it, old leaves. So that's something we're going to have to explore. I can't say that I've done an exhaustive look at this market. What we're trying to do is raise enough money up front to make sure that we're in operation for at least 2 years, that we can take care of our reporters, that we can take care of the freelancers, take care of all of the costs of printing and stuffing mailboxes and all that kind of thing. And if it doesn't make it in 2 years, the market will have told us something, and that's where it's at.
Yeah, just to.
Did that answer the question? I'm sorry.
yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be two papers with a common base. So we'll have people selling advertising with the potential to reach 4 towns. So it's not just Hamilton and Wenham businesses. Yeah, the basis, we've seen the numbers, particularly in Wenham, it's very small. But you go over the line into Beverly, you know, and there's what, 100, 200 businesses?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there is a base there, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
My other question was, I'm familiar with a paper that, in another place that had a large following basically on cultural and calendar entries. So the local organizations would have things come up and those would be covered. And a lot of people gravitated towards that, plus an ongoing calendar that was everybody in town referred to that. So.
Right.
Well, that was one of the things about the tide tables and that they do in Ipswich, that we probably don't have to let everybody in Hamilton want to know what the tide tables are, but I think that with, you know, Jay Burnham puts out a thing every week that tells you what is going to happen on the calendar for the different towns as far as the government committees and what meetings are happening at what time and so forth. I think we'll probably pick all that kind of thing
Well,
up.
that's town-based. I'm really talking more about cultural institutions.
Right, right.
Yeah, okay. We turn over 2 pages every week to what's on. Yeah. Plus upcoming events, you know, stories about those.
It is very, I mean, I think there's a lot of, like, I also noticed like puzzles in there. I mean, I think there's a lot of real, you know, to me, the challenge of that is to connect it to, I know it's like the word if the market doesn't want it, but I always think about it as like if the community doesn't want it. It's a different way, like there are the advertisers, there's the model that we've seen this successful model and a bunch of others emerging. And I think if you have a 2-year runway, the idea is that there has to be it's not just that you're putting that out, but that you're engaging the community. This is a reflection of the vibrancy of the community, of keeping them knowledgeable, and the connection in with our, you know, I keep going back to what Ella's been doing, and what motivates you to kind of do this work, right? Is that there is an avenue, like these are reflections of the town, and so the schools and our young people are such a core element here, and offering them the chance to have a voice. And I think as across the town, it's like we want to hear about what our sports teams are doing. We want to hear about what other interesting things are happening at the student level. And there's an awesome opportunity to elevate our schools up by giving students the opportunity to get real world experience here. And that's a buy-in, and then your families and all the friends see that. So it is kind of that, for me, it's the community effort that'll be the most valuable part of starting this and finding ways to connect in.
This is it. I mean, you know, we old people who are pumping in our tax money every year, we want to know what's going on over there under Eric Tracy, what he's doing with all this money. And I mean, this is all extremely. It's an exercise, and this was really stressed at the network,
Yeah,
the local news thing the other day. It's all an exercise in community building. It's all bringing everybody together to a common understanding of what's going on where they live and where they, you know, how the community is functioning. And that community building thing, I think, is the most important component that I really feel is important.
Yeah, and why now? I think now we have enough of a sample of what happens over time when you lose local media. You see the fracturing of the civic institutions, and now it's been enough time where there's been enough cases of this to kind of back up the idea that when you don't have this, you lose that cohesion that's necessary. And, you know, the fascinating thing is, like, it's amazing that there's more waste of town budgets and higher taxes in towns that don't have local media, because there's no one who are holding things accountable, and there's less, like, it's just that part of it should be justification enough.
Accountability is critical, yeah.
We had one more question, and then we're gonna wrap this up.
So I'm Kirsten Alexander, I'm a recovering journalist, and in April I was elected as town clerk in Wenham. Sleepy little Wenham. Part of my job is, as a town clerk in a small town, is being part of the Homeland Security, cybersecurity group, and in which you learn things like, in addition to the misinformation that we've become accustomed to, that it really is attacking our democracy, we are now getting a new wave of AI where they are impersonating local officials. And it looks real and it sounds real. And so I think this kind of journalism is incredibly timely. I hope it comes out before the election next year, because we've seen what happens when there's a news desert and there's a big election happening.
Yeah.
And you have to do it yourself, which is much harder. So thank you. And I also wanted to give a shout out to the high school, because they do an incredible job with media literacy. And I wish adults had the same level of media literacy that they get at Hamilton Wenham Regional High School.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Kristen. Yeah, one quick
Yeah,
last
I just
question.
wanted
Yeah,
a word of encouragement.
Sure.
For the,
sure.
I just want to say that you got to go in hard on the online, because going back to the early 2010s when online was more intense in this community, good things and bad things sent people to online, and that was 12 years ago when I was covering this town for 3 years, and you had more people voting on the Peary property, and they had more information about that than anyone
Yeah.
knows about what's going on up at the Hill right now.
Right.
You know, I mean, you had Cutler packed, you had overflowed in the back, you had cars parking every which way in this downtown to vote on one little corner of Bay Road. Meanwhile, they're gonna do the whole hill, and no one can even tell you which way is north on that topic.
Yeah.
That's just one little thing. There was a big crash up here, close the road today, and like, who was it? What'd they do? You know, what was going on? It was a delivery truck, it was hitting other cars. Like, where's the facts, you know?
Yeah.
Like, nobody in this town knows anything since the media pulled up. Gannett got it. AOL got it. I mean, we can go down the list, you know? You gotta go over to Marblehead and see what they're doing.
Yeah.
They literally have a news war, a nonprofit
Yeah,
news war going
3
on
of
in
them,
that
yeah,
town.
fighting it out.
Three
I mean,
local.
it is literally like a civic geek dream come true. No, but I'm telling you, I just want to say, their data in this town shows that this is one of the most engaged little hamlets in this like country. When Patch was covering this whole country, they had data from, this is up with like Ridgefield, New Jersey, which is like a fancy New Jersey suburb, Arlington, Mass. I mean, these are places that are on like the posters of like civic engagement.
Yeah.
This community was drawing online metrics in 2011. I mean, the kids that were winning lacrosse games and soccer games and cross-country tournaments or cross-country races year after year without losing, these kids were eating this stuff up. They want it. And the print is the gravitas, right?
Right.
I saw it in the paper. You frame it for the grand opening by when you walk into the restaurant. But you need the news now.
Yeah.
You needed the news now in 2008 and 2009 when Tim Armstrong lived in one of the wealthiest hamlets outside of, what was it called? What area of Greenwich, Connecticut, right? And he couldn't figure out, like, there was a problem with the stop sign. He like, how do I get my neighbors to like find out this stuff? Where's the data about how many accidents? And he was like dying. He's like, everyone lives in like, back then, $1 million mansion. And nobody's connected. And then he started this thing and then sold out like everyone else. And they pull up their money. And the town's left not knowing what's going on. You gotta go through a 3-hour planning board meeting while they're talking, you know, planning mumbo jumbo. You know, you gotta pay someone to sit there and listen to it make sense. I'm sorry.
no.
You just have to. It's
I
not-
think that's a wonder. I love that. That's a
Sorry,
wonderful
I'm
one.
just like too
I
excited.
appreciate it.
And I'm sorry, but like, I
So-
love this town to death, and I
I-
covered it like crazy, and I know the people here love it, and I know they want their news, and it's just killing me what's happened
Yeah.
since 2014 to today. I live in Beverly. We have a mayor's
Hold on.
race to
Can
die
I-
for, and they wouldn't even write a story in the paper about it.
I wanna-
You know? So it's just, it really hurts me.
I
I'm
do.
sorry,
No. I love the compassion. It's
And
fascinating.
people that are
But I
listening
want
in the back there
to.
know that I'm like a loose cannon.
I just
so,
know that we're gonna get.
But maybe we had the Raleigh Buchanan-
Hold on.
we had Raleigh Buchanan
Hold on.
thing.
We're gonna
I
get
mean,
kicked
there's
out of
so
here.
much going on in this town.
The-
It's amazing.
I love it. I love it.
So,
Ella.
sorry.
Ella. Last word to you. Why do you want to be a journalist?
There's just so much going on, and like you said, there's like not a really clear way to get it. And I think that I started because I wanted a stronger connection to community, and at first I was the school community, and then it kind of grew to just the world in general. I think we just don't know enough about the world, especially as younger people. We just don't have those connections. And so I think just being able to get information out to the school and to the community is a really great way to like stay involved and get things done.
Awesome. So on that note, I do know we get kicked out of here, I think, at 8 sharp, so we have to end. So I'm going to turn it over to Bethany to help wrap up the night.
Thank you. Yes, since the library closes at 8, we are meant to be out of here very quickly. My name is Bethany Swanson. Thank you all for coming. We were hoping for a great turnout and for a lively discussion, and you all delivered, so thank you very much for that. Again, thanks to Paul for moderating, and to John, Jack, and Ella for being part of our panel. Maybe one more round of appreciation for all of them. Thank you so much. Also, thanks to the Hamilton Wenham Cultural Council, who helped to support this whole speaker series, and to HWCAM for recording us, and to the library for hosting us. It's great to have a community forum like this. Just a quick reminder that our next session is on November 16th on sustainability, which will be right back here. And if you'd like any follow-up information, you can take a look at the Ipswich Local News hard copy really quickly before you go, but you can also sign up and we'll send you some information about how to get access to what John's doing now and what Jack will be doing in the future. So thanks very much for coming, and we hope to see you next time.